biggest issue in Britain right now is the cost of living crisis, making sure that you can live your life. If government doesn't attend to that, then everything else fails.
This is Talk TV live from Talk Radio Studios. Time is 6:05, and now it's time to hop over the pond to our very own Professor John Christopher Buer, Prof. JC, White House correspondent at Real Political News. And there is one story this week, Prof. JC. It looks like a decision that's nearly 50 years old, Roe versus Wade, which guaranteed under the Constitution a woman's right to an abortion is about to be overturned. And it's unprecedented because the decision wasn't due to come out till the end of June, but the presumptive ruling written by Justice Alito seems to have been, was leaked by somebody in the Supreme Court. This is an extraordinary moment, both in terms of the integrity of the Supreme Court, but above all else, for the rights of women in America, isn't it? Prof. JC, I'm not sure if you are with us or not.
I am with you.
I can hear you.
Oh yeah, I hear you. I didn't know if that was a question, but we're trying to absorb this, and whether it's a leak or not, it's out. It shows what Alito was looking at. And this came because of a Mississippi case came to the Supreme Court, and they had to make a judgment on that, and which is currently before the court, and that was what came up, and that was what was leaked. And it's not supposed to work that way. You know that. You're a jurist. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to discuss, have conversations about this, and then make a ruling, as you say, later on. But it was not. Now, what this is doing, and in a way, since Donald Trump wanted to basically fill the court with anti-Roe v. Wade justices, and he did.
Well, just to specify, he made clear as part of his, insofar as you can loosely describe it, promises, some might argue a manifesto, that he had a special list and he would only appoint Supreme Court justices who would overturn Roe v. Wade. Talk about the politicization of the judiciary. And he, usually for a president, got 3 appointees through: Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, right?
That's indeed what happened. And in fact, Barack Obama's choice for when Scalia passed away was Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
And Mitch McConnell, who is in league with all of this stuff, didn't even let that come to a vote. Mm-hmm. So there you go. And we were stuck with that. We're stuck with it now. But it has really, really made the Democrats and the progressives and some very like-minded Republicans, suburban women, absolutely infuriated. And they will be very, very active in 6 months when the midterms come up. So that may have been something that backfired on Trump, and his legacy may, in fact, be at large and be at stake.
Now, as a jurist, I look at the judgment. I read Samuel Alito's judgment. He's an interesting justice. People that want to know a little bit about him should read the case. This is a real, as I do, I listen to Supreme Court cases most evenings. It's a real hobby of mine. Read the judgment in Snyder versus Phelps. His dissent in that opinion is quite extraordinary about the limitations on free speech. And looking at the judgment, what he effectively says is that it's not for 9 unelected judges to decide the issue of abortion. It isn't a constitutional right. It's for the states to decide. It isn't a right defined in the Constitution written all those years ago. It's a dead Constitution, not an alive one. And if you want a right to abortion, persuade your fellow citizens. It's the job of the legislature. And, we look at democracies around the world, our own, for example, and it wouldn't be for the judiciary to make a determination on whether that was a right. It would be the preserve of elected officials. Now, isn't that what some may argue the Supreme Court is doing, simply returning this issue back into the hands of the people?
No, that's not the Supreme Court's job. They are not supposed to be legislating. You can live across the street from someone who lives in a different state, and you can be now tried for murder if in fact you take an after pregnancy pill, or now they're trying in some states, every state is different, Rob, and in some states they're declaring IUDs part of abortion, and they will be jailing young women and young girls, 12 years old, who, God forbid, has been, and there are many cases, raped by their father or their uncle, must go to full term with this child, and it should not be up to the states. We're going to have another civil war. We'll have another secession of states, because that's not what the Supreme Court does. We need an overall judgment. That's what the justices are supposed to do. We have universal law in this country, and that's not what is going on right now.
But what I'm trying to get at isn't
it's a fundamental in our system,
right? But isn't this really not the remedy of the judiciary, 9 lawyers, as they might argue, but frankly, a failure of the legislature to function? I mean, bearing in mind the overwhelming majority across the nation are pro-choice. The fact that there isn't, for example, a federal law protecting this right by the elected representative said something about the failure of the legislative branches of America to function adequately. I wonder what your thoughts on that are.
Well, it'll change every 2 years. Every time there's a new Congress, it'll change. And that's not the way this country was put together. It'll change on the whim of the state legislature, of the members of Congress and of the Senate. And it's changeable, and it's not real law that can be looked at and feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and I wonder, to what extent do you think this represents a very frightening, regressive movement from some of the really important advances that have been made in American society? For example, the case of Windsor, and critically the case of Obergefell, which made constitutional gay marriage. I mean, now we start with abortion. Do you think that there's going to be pressure to bring cases which are now going to unpick those very important rights as well?
It will be a floodgate will be opening. The privacy cases, Griswold, you mentioned, 14th Amendment cases, Eisenstadt, the freedom to marry, Obergefell, you mentioned, gay rights, contraceptive rights, the fact that interracial marriage, this is opened up. This will open up all of those floodgates. And it's not up to the states to decide this. The Supreme Court must rule on the precedent. And we had 3 justices who were up there for nomination, appointed by Donald Trump, who said they believe in precedent and they believe that Roe v. Wade is standing, and they wouldn't vote against it. And
well, they didn't say that, to be clear. Just to be clear, I take issue with you on that. I mean, you're talking critically about the case of Casey, Planned Parenthood versus Casey. There's a brilliantly, thoughtfully written judgment by Sandra Day O'Connor, first woman appointed to the Supreme Court by Ronald Reagan, where she went through and talked about Preston, how important it was in Casey upholding that law. The case, it's, as you know, stare decisis, as it's called. You defer to the previous judgments of the states because there are reliance interests once a law is passed. But the difference, they would argue, is that Roe versus Wade was never super precedent, like Brown versus Board of Education, which made unlawful segregated schools. It was always a case that jurists across the country continued to debate, which is why, like bad laws, you think, for example, of Brown versus Board, which overturned years of racial prejudice. You think about that, for example. I mean, that's a very important thing. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yes, but they'll use that. They'll use like the Mississippi case. They'll use the case in Texas. They'll use voting rights cases. And all these cases stand on the same constitutional analysis. That's what the people who are bringing these cases from those states are not understanding. And, the Trump court will hear them. They'll take it up, and that's what's going on right now.
Well, I mean, let's see whether they will. It's very interesting. As a real close follower of the Supreme Court, it's very interesting that a leading gay rights judgment, pro-gay rights judgment on stopping discrimination against gays and trans people in the workplace, which was very ignored by the media, was written and drafted by Neil Gorsuch in the majority very recently. So that gives me some pause for comfort when in terms of them coming for all of gay rights. But you're right to say it is a very interesting and potentially frightening moment. Just last question, when it comes to Trump friends and appointees, Rudy Giuliani, fresh out of The Masked Singer, has just backed out of an interview with the Capitol Attack Committee. What's going on there? I mean, is he ever going to answer for his contribution to that horrifying day?
I think he wants immunity, whatever kind of immunity he's looking for. And remember, we all saw him on January 6th saying, let's march. let's make this a trial of combat. Imagine that. And he knows, he was a prosecutor in New York State. He was the mayor. I know Rudy from New York, another great New Yorker, just like Trump.
Well, that, as you say, is both a British irony and what we call a mic drop, Prof. JC. It's been a delight, as always, to listen to you. Prof. JC, White House correspondent at Real Political News. This is Talk TV live from the Talk Radio studios, and you're listening to me, Rob Rinder. The time is 6:16, and what a beautiful afternoon it is.